Now let's go ahead and talk about some of these balance changes for May 29th. So excited about this. Here you can see a little infographic to show you exactly what's going on right here. Take a screenshot if you must. Now let's go ahead and talk about them individually, starting with none other than Crow. Crow is on the nerfing block one more time and is receiving a decrease in his main attack and super damage from 300 damage to 280 per feather, per dagger, or whatever it is. I don't know what it is. I think it's a dagger, but it's a 7% nerf, which is actually pretty substantial given the fact that he actually recently received a nerf to how quickly his super actually charges up. I think that this is going to help put him into a really nice position to where he can actually deal a decent amount of damage, but he's not just controlling the entire field. It's going to be a lot easier for people to actually survive. Now, they didn't say anything about his poison, and one of the reasons why Crow is so good is the fact that he's able to keep people pushed back for a very long period of time. Just keeping those stacks of poison on them prevents them from healing, and that is a huge reason why a lot of people actually like to play Crow. With his damage being decreased, I think he's going to be a lot more balanced. I think he's going to be still a pretty decent brawler, but he's not going to be S tier on every single map like he was in the last time in my tier list. Speaking of which, I'm still working on the tier list, guys. I've got a bunch of pros that are working really hard on it, and then we got these balance changes, and so it might be a little bit longer. So stay tuned, make sure you subscribe for future content and for that tier list. Now let's go ahead and talk about my boy Colt. Colt is receiving the same nerf, a decrease in his main attack and a decrease in his super damage from 300 to 280 damage. Once again, a 7% nerf to Colt's damage. Just like Crow, Colt was actually also on the nerfing block the last time a Supercell did balance changes in Brawl Stars, and you can see that he's just so strong. Now, although that's a 7% nerf, that's actually a pretty decent nerf to him as well. I think this is going to really greatly increase the amount of survivability of other brawlers and basically just allow Colt to still have some strong points in the game, but he's not going to be overwhelming like he has been along with Crow as well. Now, I've been thinking about this because I don't necessarily feel like Colt in himself is just super strong. I feel like he's a little bit stronger than most brawlers, but I think one of the reasons why he's probably receiving one of these nerfs is because of the recent addition of Heist. Since the most recent update, tons of people have been playing Heist because it's a really fun competitive game mode that's always going on, and Colt is a really solid brawler, especially with his super, to be able to break through any walls from a long distance to deal damage to the safe and as well as enemy brawlers. He is set a little bit apart from Ricochet because he can break through those walls, which has made him such a key part in basically all Heist maps, and I'm sure that Supercell is probably looking for ways to try and incorporate other brawlers into the game. I mentioned Rico. Rico is also receiving a nerf, the same nerf that Colt and Crow received, a decrease in main attack and super damage from 300 per shot to 280, which once again is a 7% nerf to both his super and to his attack. Very similar to Colt, Ricochet is one of the highest damage dealing brawlers in the game, and the fact that his shots are so wide really makes it easy for him to basically cover an entire half of the map and prevent people from actually dealing damage. The fact that he's getting a nerf, that Colt is getting a nerf, and Crow is also getting a nerf tells me that Supercell is also looking at the overall survivability of Brawl Stars. I've mentioned this in previous videos where the survivability has actually just overall been increased when a lot of the brawlers actually received width increases to their shots. It became a lot easier to actually hit more shots, and because of that, overall in the game, offense was actually buffed, particularly for these high damage dealing brawlers like Crow, Colt, and Ricochet. Because of that, it's made it really difficult for brawlers that are a little bit tankier, maybe a little bit more short range, to actually survive and do well in the meta because it's so hard for them to survive. On top of that, it's also managed to make it really difficult for some brawlers like Poco to actually do well in the meta because other brawlers like Poco also have suffered from this decreased survivability because brawlers like Poco really rely on their teammates staying alive long enough that their healing actually is able to reach them, but is also able to actually have a somewhat of a decent effect on the actual gameplay. Having a game where overall survivability is really low makes it very punishing for new players, and I'm really excited about these nerfs to these three brawlers. Now let's go ahead and talk about some of the buffed brawlers for this balance changes, starting with none other than El Primo. Honestly, I felt like Supercell really missed El Primo in the last balance changes, and I'm really glad to see that they are quickly turning out another balance change to try and give him a buff. They're increasing his main attack damage from 320 to 340 per shot, which is a 6% buff to his damage. I'm really excited about this buff because with the decrease in attack power of Colt and Rico and Crow, it's going to make it a lot easier for close range brawlers like El Primo to actually get close enough to where he can actually deal damage. Recently, I felt like El Primo was just super hard to actually get close to anybody. He really relied on teammates and bushes to actually deal any damage. And when you did actually deal some damage, the reward was very lackluster for the effort that it took to actually land that damage. And now with this buff, it should make it a lot more rewarding when El Primo does finally land those hits. Now we got Piper, who's also receiving a buff. She is receiving a decrease in her main attack reload time from 2.5 seconds down to 2.3 seconds, which is an 8% buff to her reload time. Now that Piper is going to be able to reload faster for each of her shots, she's going to have not only an increase in her overall DPS output, but it's also going to give her a lot more control. The fact that she's gonna be able to stay on the map and basically say, hey, I still got ammo, you can't get near me. That's going to make Piper feel a lot better, especially because Piper is one of those more high skill reward brawlers that a lot of newer players that has been really punishing if you actually do miss shots. Overall, it'll be interesting to see how she actually controls the meta, particularly in bounty. Then again, we've seen a lot less bounty recently, so now hopefully she'll be able to actually stand a chance in some other types of game modes. Next, we have Shelly, who's receiving an increase in her main attack range from 6.67 tiles to 7.33 tiles. This is a 10% buff to the range that Shelly's shotgun is actually going to have, and I'm really excited to see this because one thing that I've been thinking a lot about is what really differentiates Shelly between Bull and Daryl. Bull and Daryl, they're kind of a little bit different, but they're kind of similar, but they're kind of overall just better than Shelly in almost every aspect because her range really isn't that much longer than theirs, and so it's not really worth it to play her over those two brawlers unless you really need her super for some reason in your brawler composition. Now her attack range is going to be a little bit more closer to Tara's, but she's going to be a much higher damage per second brawler than Tara is, and definitely somebody you're going to want to watch out for and keep your distance from. I don't think this will be completely game changing for Shelly, but I think that it'll make her a little bit more viable where she just really wasn't beforehand. Lastly, we have Poco, whose main attack reload time is being decreased from 1.8 seconds to 1.6 seconds. That is an 11% buff to Poco's attack, and that is going to be super helpful in helping Poco do two things. First of all, add a little bit of assistance in healing his teammates when he does have his star power, but second of all, help deal a little bit more damage to enemy brawlers to try and keep them away from gems. I feel like Poco has just been outshined by Pam so much, particularly when it comes to that gem carrying role, and he really doesn't seem to do well against Jesse's turrets or anything like that because his damage output is so low. Now that being said, I feel like Poco now is finally going to be to a point where he is going to be able to compete against these other gem carriers and will actually stand a chance in the current meta that we're facing. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I also hope you enjoyed that gameplay going on over there. That was a ton of fun playing some duo showdown with Shadow Jutsu himself. We actually had 6 straight wins in duo showdown, which is absolutely insane, especially playing some of these brawlers like Shelly and Poco. It was just crazy. Thank you so much for watching. For now, this is Kairos Time ticking by, and we will see you in Brawl Stars.